Welcome back to Target Gender Equality Live. I hope you enjoy the amazing breakouts and the first mentorship sessions. We want to hear from you, so remember, share what you learned in the chat and on Twitter using the hashtags Target Gender Equality. And remember, you can message attendees and speakers to continue the conversation using the attendee and chat feature in Hopin. We're just getting started here, so have an exciting day ahead of us. Now we focus our attention on partnership and principles. In 2010, the Women's Empowerment Principles, WEPS, were launched as a set of principles offering guidance to businesses on how to promote gender equality and women empowerment in the workplace, marketplace, and community. Established by the UN Global Compact and UN Women, the WEPS are informed by international labor and human rights standards and grounded in the recognition that businesses have a stake in and responsibility for gender equality and women's empowerment. Today, after 11 years, UN leaders and WEPS signatories will discuss accomplishments, remaining challenges, and the path forward to gender equality by 2030. We will hear from companies that have committed to these principles and hear their thoughts on best practices and implementation. These personal commitments and hardships that women still face in businesses. But first, it's my privilege to welcome Maggie Lake, business journalist and former anchor CNN International, who will speak with the women leading this partnership and carrying the WEPS forward. Sandra Ojiambo, Executive Director of the United Nations Global Compact, and Pumzile Mnyambo Nguka, United Nations Under Secretary General and Executive Director of UN Women. They will reflect on 10 years of the Women's Empowerment Principles and the guidance they have provided to businesses in advancing gender equality in the workplace, marketplace, and community. Maggie, over to you.
Thank you, Lydia. And thanks to all the attendees for joining us here today at Target Gender Equality Live. My name is Maggie Lake, and I spent many years as a business journalist with Reuters. I'm excited to continue today's conversation with changemakers from around the world on how they're working to advance gender equality in the workplace, marketplace, and community, specifically through implementing the Women's Empowerment Principles, also known as the WEPS. Now, we are joined by two leading voices as heads of organizations accelerating progress on the gender equality dimensions of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Once again, please welcome Pumzile Mnyambo Nguka, the Executive Director of UN Women, and Sandra Ojiambo, the Executive Director of the UN Global Compact. A very warm welcome to both of you. I am so thrilled to be able to be here and spend some time with you talking about this important topic. Incredibly, last year marked the 10th anniversary of the Women's Empowerment Principles. As we reflect on that, Pumzile, why are the Women's Empowerment Principles important, and how do they help advance the gender equality agenda?
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me. And happy CSW, happy Women's Month to everybody. The Women's Empowerment Principle provide a holistic framework for companies to promote gender equality, because as you can imagine, each company having to work out what is the best way forward in this very complex field. Companies get a lot of help from working within a framework that has been thought through very thoroughly, where they can also learn together with their peers. It is also a vehicle for corporates to deliver gender equality in support of sustainable development goals, including our own goal 5, which is the goal on gender equality. But you have to look also at the concrete things that are specific to companies that advance gender equality. Equal pay, top of the agenda, because people go to work to bring back a check. And if that check is compromised, it's already a less reason to be excited about going to work. The Women's Empowerment Principle also enable companies to establish gender responsive supply chains. They help to establish unstereotyped marketing and advertising. They also can assist companies to have proper policies and guidelines at the workplace in order to end and address sexual harassment. They provide a framework through which you could promote women and ensure that there's adequate participation on women in leadership making structures at the workplace. And this happens to be the theme that for this year's CSW. We are really trying to push forward on the issues of women's leadership and empowerment. And right now, women's participation and leadership in most of our corporations is not where it should be. But it also provides a possibility for a global network of companies with similar values to get together like we are doing today, so that they can learn from each other and they can give each other feedback and learn from both success as well as challenges that companies face. But 2020 has got to be the year that companies make a move on the representation of women, because we will not be able to get through this pandemic if women are left out. So much of what has happened during the pandemic has affected women disproportionately. You can't have a bunch of guys solving problems for women and leaving women out and missing out of the insight of women of how the problems that affect them can be addressed. And I'm hoping that the WEPS signatories are going to lead in showing the importance of participation of women and how to build back better in a gender responsive way, in addition to being greener and equitable. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Sanda, so much has changed over the last decade, and we've really seen that, as Phumzile points out, accelerate dramatically during this pandemic. How has the private sector commitment evolved, but both as you've witnessed it over this decade, but now in light of what we've seen just in the last year?
Thank you, Maggie. And first, thank you to Phumzile for joining us and sharing those insights from her perspective at UN Women. Again, let me echo happy Women's Month and happy CSW. So Maggie, it's really great to have this opportunity to first celebrate 10 years of the Women's Empowerment Principles, not only really to look at the progress we've made, but also really to take stock of what else needs to be done. When the principles were signed in 2010, there were 39 signatories. We now have up to 4,500 business leaders who signed up, and over 2,000 companies who've adopted the principles gender gap analysis tool. So it's very clear that this tool and the principles are indeed useful in providing guidance for companies. We did a survey at the UN Global Compact, and 82% of companies participating say that gender equality is embedded into their corporate sustainability strategies. So it's clear there is a shift in corporate engagement and corporate priorities. But as we always say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And that's where really we need to look at what is happening within companies and what are these shifts between policy and commitment and real action and outcomes. The truth is, yes, there are more women in the workplace and in the boardroom. And as Phumzile has alluded to, inclusive decisions do result in inclusive outcomes. We need more of that. Statistics show us that companies with high female representation have annual returns that are perhaps about 3% higher than those with the less gender diversity. But the truth is, it's not just a case of show me the numbers. There's lots of barriers to where we need to go. Sexual harassment in the workplace is still a key issue. And whereas we have the Me Too's and the Time's Up movements, these are not always applicable around the world. And there are many women who continue to suffer in silence in the workplace. Collectively, we need to do a lot more to get women at the table, making decisions at the table that count. It's not just a business imperative, though. We always say at the Global Compact, it's a human rights imperative and it's a moral responsibility. So, we're at that good place where we can take stock. Indeed, companies are listening, companies are paying attention, but there's still a lot more to be done. And we're grateful that we have partnerships with UN Women and Sunny the principles to help us continue to guide and navigate through where we need to go.
Phumzile, as we think about the need for that concrete impact now to see the action, can you share how UN Women is supporting business in implementing the principles?
Hello?
I think we're having a little bit of, Phumzile, can you hear us? Are we having a little audio trouble?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So let's pick up, when we think about, Sandra just said, the need for concrete impact and action now. Can you share how UN Women is supporting business in implementing the WEPS and advancing gender equality more broadly?
Yes, we have developed a comprehensive WEPS journey, if you like, something that accompanies the company through this journey. It takes companies from considering signing the principles to reporting on progress made. And for us, it's very important that when a company is going to sign up on the principles, they consult within their companies, within their board, so that you have a buy-in within the whole institution. So this guide takes you to consulting, and then it journeys with you until you have fully become a signatory. And we invite you to download the new WEPS brochure that was published last Friday, which will take you through the entire process. The journey offers WEPS signatories and would-be signatories a guidance, for instance, on equal pay, on sexual harassment, on family-friendly policies and childcare, on gender-responsive procurement, and other key actions. Let me just say, as a result of the pandemic, we have seen the increase of the burden of care. We have seen, especially women between the ages 24 and 35, opting out of the labor markets because of responsibilities at home, and because this is the age group that has younger children. This is something that needs policy thinking, because we have to avoid the danger of going back to an era where the women's place was at home and the men's place was in the office. That pattern can actually emerge because of this situation and preference for companies to have people working from home. We are sounding this alarm, and we're saying that you must encourage women to have an option of working outside home. So this is one thing that we are going to have to add now in the guidance for WEPS principle, how you avoid to have a company made up of men and women who work from home, and everything that comes with this. We also have the diagnosis for equal remuneration, a self-assessment tool to support companies and organizations with the equal pay activity. We have WEPS Learn, which is our dedicated platform for learning materials. And we have the documentaries, testimonies, something that could give you a glimpse of what those who have come before you have fed in the journey. And we want to thank the EU for all the support they have given us, which has enabled us to put together all these supportive tools and mechanisms. And we do invite all of you who have stories to share to come forward and share your stories. But we are concerned that there isn't enough transparency. Not enough companies are actually tracking as then sharing the results of the interventions that they've put in their companies as a result of becoming WEPS signatories. Mm-hmm. This is something that we would like to discuss with you, encourage, because if we don't monitor and we don't report, we miss the plot somehow.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And it's so important to do that, Sanda, because this is a learning journey, especially after what we've seen this year. And, you know, for many, I think the WEPS are a great example of the public-private sector working hand in hand to reach gender equality and a more sustainable future. Why are those public partnerships so important, especially in light of what's happened?
Right, and I think Phumzile has absolutely nailed it. You know, COVID has really disrupted a lot of progress that was being made in terms of gender equality, and we certainly do not want to revert to a time where women's participation is relegated simply to the domestic sphere because of all of the caregiving and work that needs to be done. I think actually our Secretary General put it that the world must be on high alert because the pandemic has truly slowed down all of the progress that, you know, has been made on gender equality in recent decades. So I think, you know, while it's important to really focus on the health and the economic impacts of COVID, there's many other areas that we must really look at, you know, education, look at access to healthcare, because all of these, without strong public-private partnerships, threaten to push further back the gains and the opportunities for girls and women. I think public-private partnerships are further important because, you know, the challenges that we face in the COVID era and beyond cannot be solved by one entity. And so whereas we're here calling on companies to take on responsible business behavior around gender and gender equality, we also need that public sector participation to look at the overall enabling environment within which companies function, within which policies are set, and within which together we can really look at building forward through the COVID pandemic and continuing the momentum and progress on gender equality. So it's very clear that, you know, companies, as was espoused when the SDGs were designed, you know, the private sector is at the table with the UN, with governments and with other entities, so that we have all sectors truly responding and putting their actions and their resources towards addressing gender equality.
Absolutely. And I think both of you laid out so beautifully why it's so important to have this framework as we all move forward and grapple with really what has been an unprecedented time. And we're almost at the end, but Phumzile, if I could just go back to you for a moment and maybe sort of sum up, you know, what you're looking toward for the future for WEPS as we embark on the next decade and the priority. And Sanda, if you can both give us what the priority is for both of you.
Well, firstly, as we say that the pandemic has disproportionately affected women, 2/3 of the jobs that have been lost were lost by women. That's a huge number of women who have been thrown into extreme poverty. And one of the reasons why it has been so easy for women to be the ones that lost most of the jobs is because they don't have decent working conditions. It is easy to get rid of them. Mm-hmm. So we are calling on companies in Building Back Better to go back to the drawing board about the conditions of service that they give to women so that we never again, in the next pandemic, because it's not whether we will have, it's when we will have another pandemic. We do not find ourselves in this situation where we have set women back so much. And of course, we also see that it is important to maintain this multi-stakeholder platform where we have all these stakeholders together. Generation equality, which is our mechanism to respond to unfinished business of the Beijing platform, of the SDGs, is to bring together many more stakeholders, and private sector is a critical component of that. So we want to invite you to participate in all of those fora and bring forward your A game and your experiences that can advance gender
We need
equalities.
that A game. Sandra, we're out of time, but very briefly.
I'll take it from the business angle. I think we need more companies to sign on to these principles and really embrace the fact that we do need to drive gender equality through the workplace, the marketplace, and the community. But I also want to echo that gender equality is not a woman's issue. It's actually an all of society issue. And companies really do need to build the right partnerships to address gender equality in their businesses and in their supply chains.
Absolutely. Thank you, both of you, Sanda and Phumzile, for the encouraging conversation on the progress we've made, and certainly what needs to be done in the path forward for the WEPS. Thank you, both of you. And with this in mind, I am honored to introduce our next panelists to keep this conversation going. They are 5 private sector leaders who have been empowering women through their organizations and initiatives and advancing the WEPS around the world. Please welcome Michelle Halep, CEO of MetLife, Roberto Marquez, CEO of Natura, and Sally Gilligan, Chief Information Officer and Chief Strategy Officer of Gap. Thanks to all of you for being with us today. I'd like to begin the conversation by asking each of you to tell us why gender equality is important to you, both personally and as a leader. And Michelle, if I could start with you, why is it important for you and for MetLife to make this a priority?
Sure, thank you, Maggie. I think you'll find that a lot of men who champion allyship often draw from experiences in their own lives. I grew up in a part of the world where women are fighting for basic rights, let alone equal rights. When it came to my own family's experience, my parents treated my sister, my brother, and I equally. They wanted us to pursue, the same opportunities, all opportunities that we were interested in pursuing. And my sister has gone on to have a great career in journalism. Shortly after I became CEO of MetLife, she became the first woman editor of a major financial publication. And I'm very proud and inspired by her journey, but I also know that if I compare hers to mine, she's had to overcome many obstacles along the way because of her gender. And I have 2 daughters of my own, and I want them to pursue, all of their ambitions and dreams. And I think, they shouldn't face, those same obstacles that my sister faced. So, and I'm hoping that will be the case if we all commit to gender equality. So this is an area that I'm very passionate about. But I'm also the CEO of MetLife, and I have a fiduciary responsibility to MetLife stakeholders. And I believe that the business case for gender equality is highly compelling. We're a purpose-driven company, and for us to truly live our purpose, we have to be an equitable, inclusive, and diverse company. And that's something that we're very committed to. Our strategy is anchored in our purpose, and at the core, it's creating this virtuous circle where we deliver for all stakeholders, our people and communities, our customers, and our shareholders. And if we think about those stakeholders, starting with our people, investing in our people means promoting gender equality, gender equity in the workplace. If you think about the talent that's out there, a very significant percentage of that talent are women. So being able to attract, to retain, to promote is critical to our success as a company. And if we think our customer base and the importance of our employee base mirroring that customer base in order to meet the expectations of our customers, then again, a high percentage of our customers are women as well. So, the case is compelling from that standpoint. And then, I think Sandra pointed to it, but there's a lot of research out there that indicates that more diverse companies are also more successful, are more profitable companies. So for all these reasons, we believe that the bottom line here is promoting gender equity and equality is good for the bottom line, as well as it's truly about living our purpose as a company.
Yeah, and when you combine that business case and the personal commitment, it can't be more powerful. And I can tell you, as a business journalist, I am thrilled to see your sister at the helm of the FT. We need more women serving in top leadership positions at media companies. She'll certainly be an inspiration to many. As we continue the conversation, I just want to welcome, a little bit of technical trouble getting her in, but I'm thrilled to welcome Maria Villanueva from CBC Bottling Corp. She is now part of the conversation. Maria, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We're just going around and just starting off by talking a little bit about why people are so personally committed as well to why this is important from a personal position as a leadership position. And I just wanted to continue with Sally, bouncing off of what Michelle said. You certainly have lived the experience of climbing to the very top in what is sometimes male-dominated positions, especially as you get to the top of corporations. Why is gender equality so important to you personally and as a leader?
Well, I think that in every company, the strategy leads
Maria,
the way, but
let me just interrupt 1 second. Sorry, Maria. I was directing that at Sally, but we will get to you in just a moment.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay.
Thanks, Maggie, and thank you for the opportunity. I think just to pick up on your question, for me personally, I've had incredible career opportunity in supply chain and technology. And as you've mentioned, traditionally fields that are very male dominated, particularly at the executive level. But my opportunity came through strong advocacy through my mentors and sponsors. And I really do believe strongly that opening the same opportunities, similar to how Michelle spoke earlier, to all women and girls so they can bring their point of view is so important. But to create those opportunities really requires strong advocacy. And as a leader, I believe without that diversity of thought and representation, we're not getting the best answers to the best problems. And I think many of our speakers have spoken to it. If we don't have everyone around the table, we aren't going to get those points of view. And I do believe strongly to support women, you have to support the whole self. And that comes through training, health, safety, and community. For that reason, I am executive sponsor of our Gap Women in Leadership resource group. And I think empowering women in the workplace begins by creating safe environments to mentor, coach, and learn. And that's so important to continue the advocacy to let all of us reach our potential.
Absolutely. And having role models in positions so that women can see a path forward is incredibly important. Maria, CBC is the first Guatemalan company to sign the WEPS. Why do you feel so passionately about this work?
I think that for us as a company, it's a really example of how you can align the strategy with the culture. I was saying that the strategy always leads the way, but the only way to get there it's the culture. And this is a company that has really in the daily basis, the leadership really engaged of trying to make a difference, not only for the employees, but also for the community. And starting for that point, for us, the commitment to guarantee the quality of all the model, of all the reward system, the process to engage the team, to guarantee that we have the good training plan with the good competencies between all the female and the male that works for the company. It's been quite a journey. So sometimes you see your goal, your dream in a really long term, but when you get the chance to put this together in little milestones, allows you to be in this, to guarantee that you are aligning the strategy with the culture and give you the opportunities to all the amazing women that we have in the company.
And Roberto, Natura everyone's had different journeys, but Natura has been involved for years. Why is this an issue that you've chosen to champion?
So first, Maggie, thanks for having me. So first of all, Natura & Co., which is a group of business, all of them were really founded with this notion that business can and should be a force for good, right? So Avon, Natura, The Body Shop, and ESOP. And on a personal level, I would say this is very important for me, and I'm very passionate about it. And similar to Michael, I have 3 daughters, 2 of them already in the workforce. What I dream for them is to make sure that they can be very successful in their careers, regardless of the gender, and being able to really succeed equally in their decisions, professional decisions, whatever that means for them. And on a professional level, Natura & Co is very lucky to be working not only with 40,000 associates, but we work with almost 6 million consultants and representatives in 100 countries. The vast majority of them are women. And really, it's incredible to see the power of transforming society and the work of those consultants and representatives, and being able to support them, being able to create the right conditions for them to really be successful as entrepreneurs. So really, it's the core of our business. And as a consequence of that, almost a year ago, we actually launched our 2030 Commitment to Life, our sustainability agenda. And a key pillar of that talks about defending human rights and being more humankind. And in that particular one, we are very connected to the women empowerment principles. We want to make sure that we establish very clear goals and track the progress of those to make sure that we can really tackle gender inequality. And I'm going to just illustrate 3 of them. You know, we committed ourselves that by 2023, we want to have 50% of women on board and senior leadership positions across our entire group. I'm pleased to say that we are now at a 48%. We still have a little bit of work to do, but we're very committed to close that gap in less than 2 years. The other thing is equitable pay. And we committed ourselves to close any gap that we might have in terms of equitable pay also by 2023. Here we conducted last year a very thorough study, over 35,000 associates in over 70 countries. And what we found out is when we have on the same geography, same seniority, and same roles, we still have a gap of about 1%, what we call an explainable gap. We are committed to close this gap this year. We're not going to even wait for 2023. And the last goal that we put for ourselves is to make sure that we have living wage or above for everybody by 2023. So we believe companies holding themselves accountable, establishing very clear goals and really tracking the progress and committing to the women empowerment principles is a great way for us to make progress in this very important topic.
It certainly is. And it perhaps so important now to double down on those commitments, given what we're seeing as we come out of this pandemic. Michelle, why is it so important that businesses ensure a gender-sensitive response when thinking about community initiatives, advocacy, and your own programs as we pull out of this pandemic?
Yeah, Maggie. Well, we conduct a survey every year where we survey employers and employees in the U.S. to see, what are the main trends that are emerging in the workplace. And we're actually releasing the survey today. But the biggest takeaway from our 2020 survey is that the longer the pandemic drags on, the worse the women in the workplace feel and are doing relative to men. And that's really a telling takeaway. This trend holds across mental, physical, and social health as well. I also read an article in the FT last week with very similar conclusions in terms of the fact that working mothers in particular bore the brunt of the pandemic from a parenting perspective, and that's made balancing parenting and their careers extremely difficult, and that's led to mental stress issues for them as well. And if we think about the WEP principles, the third principle in particular, I think is relevant here because it calls on signatories to ensure the health, safety, and well-being of workers. And here we see that women in particular are bearing the brunt of the pandemic. So I think there's several things that we can do to and we are doing to address this issue. One is, I think, for leaders just to remove the stigma of talking about mental health issues by talking about it, by addressing it. Our experience is that this is very important. Also, it's equally important to have wellness programs in place that help alleviate some of these issues by offering support, resources to women and men in the organization, and in particular during this pandemic, it was important to enhance those support tools by addressing work-life integration and resilience in particular. We also have women business networks in 30 markets, across our businesses globally. And those are basically volunteer networks that are backed by company support and resources. And this peer-to-peer networking can be very helpful as well, from a mentorship perspective, but also in providing indispensable support, to address issues such as those that we're seeing emerge during the pandemic. What we also saw during the pandemic is the need for parents to adapt to working from home. One of the sort of simple things that I can mention here that we've trialed and that's proved quite effective, are simply parent coffee chats where a group of parents get together, typically 15 to 20, and you'd be amazed at sort of the power of realizing that some of the same challenges, issues, struggles are shared by other parents, and having this type of exchange as well as exchanging ideas on how to deal with these issues has been quite effective. And then last but not
Michelle,
least,
I just want to jump in for a second because that's such an important point. And I think for some people, just being seen and knowing that you are not alone in this has been so important. And Maria, I know that the burden of care has been a focus for you at CBC as well, and sort of grappling with the challenge that this has presented families. What are some of the things that you have been doing in order to address this? You are either on mute, Maria, or we are having audio issues.
Okay, now you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Perfect. I was saying that during this pandemic, we knew that 80% of the process that we were living was with a really psychology context. So we put together a plan to guarantee that our team members could have the opportunity to go with the family and to have all that information that they needed, not only to be good at this point of the year of the company, but also to guarantee that the family had tools to be really aware of how they can work right now as a team. For us, it was really exciting to see that when you give tools, we have a corporate university, and with that corporate university, we gave different kind of trainings to guarantee that everybody knew how to perform at this time, to guarantee the productivity for them to feel really safe at home. The company was giving the opportunity to manage the working place at home. We didn't know how to do that, and with the technology and with the training process, we did a great job. Also, for us was really important to know that the wellness process in this moment, it's really important. So how to guarantee that we can have three main pillars, that all that team could have the opportunity to keep on developing, but also to have a really balance between the health that they need, emotional and physical. So we put together a wellness plan that it's going along all through the system. And also to guarantee that we have 43% of the key decision positions of the company are women, how to manage all the management system when you are online, how they can be really aware of how can they work with the families at home, with the kids at school. So the psychological process was really important for us, and it was really successful. And another thing was like the training programs, not only based on the importance of the skills to doing good the job, but the will, the competencies that you need to put together so everybody can have the same opportunity to develop.
Yeah, it's a broad approach. Sally, we're talking about a lot of the challenges and the difficulties we have to overcome, but it strikes me that as companies are thinking about what this post-pandemic new normal, if we can call it that, is going to look like, there's also an opportunity here to put the empowerment principles into action, perhaps to accelerate some of the things companies were thinking about, programs around gender equality. Where has the GAP found success in implementing the WEPS and making progress on gender equality? And what are you going to be focused on moving forward?
Thanks, Maggie. You know, it's incredibly important that we continue the momentum. And for us, it started with ensuring equal pay for equal work. We were the first Fortune 500 company to ensure that our data was validated by a third party that showed that we are paying at all levels of the organization equal pay for that equal work. In building on that, we employ millions of women in our supply chain. And so we founded our PACE program, which is a women's life skill and empowerment program for the women that work in our factories. But I think what is important in terms of building momentum forward is we've chosen to share that program with other organizations under the spirit of the more we partner, the more we amplify the impact. And to date, we've impacted 800,000 women and girls with this program. And that program provides, similar to some examples that others have shared, life skills, important childcare support, financial literacy, and providing an ability for women and girls to see a better future for themselves. And we've had such incredible impact, not only for the women in the program, but also recognizing the impact on our business and on our suppliers. And they're realizing that when you invest in others, you increase your return, and you also decrease the impact that some of the negative impacts on women have on our business environment. But I think what we're most excited about moving forward and building on that strong momentum, we just recently announced a partnership with Empower at Work. It's a broad initiative across the industry to create a platform that is really a network and skills to the benefit of women and workers around gender equality. And we just committed for 2025 for 100% of our strategic factories to be participating in Empower at Work, 100% of our strategic factories to achieve gender parity at the supervisor level. Ensuring that women are in leadership positions is an incredibly important step. 100% of workers will be employed through the programs at our strategic factory, and we will also make sure that their voices are heard through gender equitable workplace committees. It's really important to have the feedback loop, and 100% of our factories will have prevention and response management systems and trainings in place to address gender-based violence. And we do believe that continuing to build on the public and private partnerships with measurable goals and continuing to work through that has had the largest impact and continues to amplify what we can do together.
And that is powerful once you move beyond the walls of your company and start to reach down through that supply chain and through your partnerships. Roberto, I'd like to bring you in because I think this is something that you think about as well, with the different companies under your umbrella and the many different women that touch that supply chain, especially in light of COVID. Can you tell us a little bit about more? Sally just mentioned domestic violence, and you, your company unveiled a really, I think, innovative program touching on that. And this is a subject that used to be taboo for companies. The Isolated Not Alone campaign to shed some light on domestic violence. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think it's really innovative.
Yeah, no, Maggie, thank you for bringing that up. I mean, it is really a very important issue to tackle, right? We heard on the previous panel that one of the consequences of the pandemic is that 2/3 of the jobs lost were actually in women, which we all need to think about how to re-engage, how to reconnect with those women, and how to create the right environment for them to actually get back to the workforce. But another consequence of the pandemic is exactly what you mentioned. We've seen and tracked data showing significant increase in domestic violence. Think about it. Unfortunately, with the pandemic and the lockdowns, most of those women that were subjected to domestic violence got confined in an environment that was actually the most perverse one for them to deal with that terrible consequence of domestic violence. So on that, we were able, for the first time together, the 4 business joint forces, to create a campaign called Isolated Not Alone, to really raise awareness and create conditions for those women to reach out and seek help. We're able to really reach over 200 million women through our online channels, and we're able to donate over $2 million between the Avon Foundation and a lot of the activities also in Latin America, through NGOs, through organizations that could really be closer to those women and trying to offer some comfort and help when needed. But again, it is a very perverse consequence of this pandemic, and something that it is important that everybody is aware and trying to do our part in helping those women that are confined in environment that actually even promote more that kind of violence. So a very important topic. So I think we all need to think about some of the consequences for women in terms of job loss, domestic violence, how we also help them in terms of education and the importance of vaccination. So thinking about it in a holistic way, what are the things that we are companies, but most important as society, we can do to really alleviate some of those pressure points that we are seeing as a consequence of the pandemic.
Absolutely, and so important to be having those conversations in a venue, in a discussion, and a day like this. Michelle, top leaders can make commitments, but things only change when we can follow through on the implementation, right? How is MetLife getting that level of buy-in? We heard Sanda and Fumzile both talk about that when we kick things off at the top of this hour. How are you getting buy-in across your global organization?
Yeah, absolutely, Maggie. And, one of the things that I'm very pleased and proud of is the fact that when we decided to sign the WEPS, 37 of our general managers from across the world took on the initiative to do so themselves as well. And, as just a clear signal of their support and their commitment to gender equality. So, this is something that, has to be sort of driven from the top of the house, but it's also important to build grassroots support for it as well. And, from my experience, the best ideas, frankly, don't come from the top of the house. They come from, our teams, from encouraging and promoting, an open culture where people challenge the status quo and generate, innovative ideas in terms of how we can make progress. And, building that grassroots support is not confined to women only. We have to bring men on board. And, one of the important aspects here is to make sure that we make the case for why this is important for us, critical for us as a company, critical to our success, critical to our future. And making this compelling case, as well as helping to identify some of the unconscious biases that exist in an organization, can be very helpful in terms of bringing men on board. And last but not least, you have to also put in place the processes that, based on the gender gap analysis on the tools provided by the WEPS, to make sure that you are making progress and to hold yourself accountable for that progress, by being sort of open, including publicly, about your sharing your data and statistics, but also your progress as you move along on this journey. So those are some of the things that I think can help an organization make real progress in this area.
Absolutely. And that lays it out so perfectly. Make the case to convince people it's the right thing to do. Give them the framework and the tools to do it, and then the transparency and accountability that comes after it. All critical steps in this. Maria, as we look forward, what barriers do you face? I mean, you've made so much progress and there's so much passion you can see coming through. What are the barriers that you face as you try to continue this conversation? Are they internal, or is it rooted more in a broader culture?
We are a company that we have operation in 14 countries in Latin America. So at the beginning for us to guarantee the equal opportunities all along the organizational structure, going all the way through the front line, was one of the main issues. Because we have a different kind of security issues for the women who can go in the sales area, for example. So that was a really obstacle. But at the same time, that was a great opportunity to us, because we decided that to allow all the recruitment process all along for the company, we decided to go all the way from the doors to the inside. So we started putting together amazing programs to give opportunities in the supply area, logistic area. And now we are really proud to say that we have amazing general managers, we have amazing fabric managers. And if from that, as I was telling, from the door to the inside, we got the opportunity to put together plans to do training programs with women, to go to the universities and to show how amazing it's the industry. We are in the food and beverage industry. So we are involving the same way with the sales area, but it's a little bit difficult. But in the manufacturing area and the logistics, we've been making amazing plans. We put together mentoring, we put together in the corporate university different kinds of programs to guarantee that our women in the team can have the ability to perform their competencies. And one thing that we understood is that a lot of the women that works in the company, they are married and they have kids. So we put together a program that is called Excellence Academy, and we are giving the opportunity of scholarships for the girls, not only the sons, but only the girls. And in our countries in Latin America, you see often that all the education programs in the daily basis of education goes a lot to the little kids, to men, but we're putting together scholarships to guarantee that the leadership of the daughters of the employees that work for us can have the same excellence attitude, and they can go all the way and end the school and the scholarships in the university. So I think
that is wonderful, Maria. That is planting the seed, certainly, for the next generation. Sally, as we begin to close out this session, what's your message to other businesses? Why should they adopt the WEPS to really increase their focus on gender equality?
Women, for us personally, women make up over 76% of our company, and they predominantly make up our companies. In society at large, they make up well over 50% of the global population. In order to have the representation with everyone's voice and to truly build thriving communities, we have to do it together. And you do it together through building public and private partnership. And it starts, as many of our speakers have spoken with to today, of giving people opportunity that truly is equal and ensuring it's a holistic approach, a systemic approach that allows them to build the life skills needed to sustain that opportunity. And so as I think about closing out this conversation, and it's been an absolute pleasure to participate with everyone, it's that continued partnership towards the principles and making sure we are using data and measurement to forward all of the intentions behind it so that every woman and girl can have their voice heard.
As they should. Roberto?
Yeah, and just to build on this last point, which I totally agree. So super important to embrace the principles because they will drive better outcomes. You know, gender equality and having the right representation will foster better conversations, better outcomes for business and for society as a whole. So I would encourage everybody to make sure that you support, that you better understand that, and driving transparency, right? Not being afraid to disclose when there is gap, because in order to actually make progress, we gotta track the data, we gotta commit ourselves to goals and objectives in this area. And most important, then to be transparent about it, to talk about it, not to hide it. And accept when there are issues, because in most cases, as we also have as in our companies, we still have gaps that needs to be addressed, that needs to be corrected. But by talking about, by engaging the workforce, that's the way I think we're going to make progress. And the last thing that I would say is let's always remain that the health and well-being in women, both at home and a working place, is still an issue. And we heard about it, the impact of the pandemic and how we needed to really think holistic about re-engaging all those women that lost their jobs, thinking about domestic violence and all the other issues that women are facing, working from home with their families, and how can we really facilitate that transition to this new normal.
Michelle, very quickly, we'll let you close it out. That sort of transparency and honesty about shortcomings, so important, but not always easy.
No, and I think where the principles are, we found them to be extremely helpful to us. Is that, everybody has the right intentions and good intentions here, but it's, sometimes it's about, where do you start? What do you focus on? What are the priorities? And how do you measure progress? And I think, the principles, the gap analysis, has been extremely helpful in helping us identify those areas that we should focus on, and then holding ourselves accountable, being transparent in terms of measuring the progress that we're making. And maybe one last thing I would just say, Maggie, just in terms of the impact of the pandemic, one of the big issues that we all have to deal with and to contribute to is to make it easier for women to return to the workplace, because the studies show that women are lagging men in terms of intent to return to the workplace. So thinking through about creating a more flexible work place, work environment, returnship type programs will be extremely important, and in making sure that we bring women back to the workplace as quickly as possible post-pandemic.
Absolutely. I'm so disappointed that we're out of time, because this is a wonderful discussion. We could keep it going, but thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you for your leadership, your wise insights, and for highlighting some of the really innovative programs that are helping close the gender gap in your organizations. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, to achieve the SDGs by 2030 must be a priority for all stakeholders, including business. I'd like to encourage all companies today to sign the WEPS, join the community of, as Sandra said, now over 4,500 CEOs who have publicly committed to advance gender equality and to collaborate in multi-stakeholder networks to foster business practices that empower women. The links for more information on how to join can be found in the event chat at the UN Global Compact Content Studio. As the world rebuilds from COVID-19 pandemic, it is critical that we tackle those persistent barriers to gender inequality and unlock the power of women in the workplace, marketplace, and community. Let's join forces to create a more equitable future. Together, we can build a better tomorrow. Thank you all so much. Lydia?
Thank you so much, Maggie, Sandra, Ujambo, Pumsile, Mlambonguka, and all the panelists. It was an amazing panel, so full of hope and understanding that we have to bring mental health services and issues to the table after the pandemic. So we will now take a short 15-minute break, and we'll be back in just a moment.